Hi, welcome everyone. So my name is Vikas Tyagi. I'm one of the directors with Effico, and today we were going to talk about Capex versus Opex and how designing the right model for sustainable value is so important, especially in kind of the dynamics that we see at the moment, the macroeconomic climate as well. So how can we set it up in a way where value add is distinctively better and really adding to the growth of an organization. But before we go into that, I've got an expert today with me here. So Fabienne, welcome
Thank you very much.
to the discussion. Fabienne has worked with a number of large organizations in senior capacity, but I'll let you introduce herself and then we'll get into some questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Vikas. So Fabienne Lesbros, yes, I've been in procurement all of my career, and I've held CPO roles in several organizations across different industries, in construction, in pharma, in services like telephony, in retail, for the co-op, etc. But primarily Capex is a very interesting topic for me because I've dealt with it several times in my career, and my first role actually was in charge of part of Capex for GlaxoSmithKline as a procurement person. So a topic dear to my heart, and sometimes that doesn't have enough focus, I think, in organizations. So thanks, Vikas, for the opportunity.
No, thanks for joining us for this, Fabienne. Much appreciated. So I think I'll basically start with not all Capex is created equal, right? There are projects and there's kind of categories which are a bit more, you could argue, more an Opex approach relevant. How should organizations distinguish between these standard Capex items that suit more of a category sourcing model versus kind of projects which require a different commercial approach?
Yes, thank you. So I'll give you two big examples in my career. So the first one would be the Channel Tunnel project. So I was privileged enough to be part of it, and this is like a massive project within which you have obviously equipments and categories that you can address, and this project and the whole procurement team, different I would say layers of organization, especially as you said, like commercially, how would a project operate, but from construction from scratch down to spare parts at the end. Obviously part of the tunnel was negotiated, and procurement was heavily involved with engineering. Do you take this approach into a normal company? So GlaxoSmithKline, well, I was part also of the Capex team there. And again, we would have different categories of equipment, but when we had to build a plant, then you needed capability within the team about how to, build a plant from scratch, deal with the local governments, regulatory, etc. So I would say the answer to Capex and doing Capex properly in procurement is to have a formal structure. So like in any category, you have a team that is responsible for Capex, whether they deal with a project or whether they deal with a category, and you source it with the same diligence as you do the other ones.
Okay. So I think it's important to make sure that you're differentiating the approach for a project versus a category, right? Because there is a little bit of a difference in the way you're transacting the two. One is end-to-end project delivery, working closely with engineering teams and operations teams, I guess.
Yes, and a lot of different capabilities. And projects is from buying the land down to installing the equipment, making sure everything works, and the plant or the project is built. Yeah, and then the other one is just categories that you deal with every day.
Exactly.
Equipment that needs to be maintained, and also equipment that is evolving a lot right now, and I'm sure we'll talk about it around AI and connectivity as well. Lots to do around mitigation, risk mitigation, planning, total cost of ownership, etc., because longevity of equipment is extremely important.
And where do you see things going wrong, right? I mean, some of the organizations I've worked with or I've seen, sometimes a one-size-fits-all approach is used and it doesn't really work. Have you come across any of that in your experience?
Yes, totally. So in a mature procurement organization, you would have people fully dedicated to Capex and to dealing with the engineers like any other stakeholders in any other categories. And basically, you would work alongside them, you would visit the plants, you would understand the business needs, and you would build the budget with them. So pre-budget, you will be part of the discussion around everything they wanted to do, whether on the project or on sourcing of specific Capex. And then you'll be able to build your strategy alongside them. And the key is to think about the focus you want to put on it and not to forget about it, because often procurement is called too late at the last minute just to place a contract, basically. So this idea of having a structure dedicated to it is extremely important, and also the dialogue with finance around how they treat Capex, what approach they want around savings you need to drive around it, and depreciation of equipment, etc., is very important.
That brings us to a good point, Fabienne. You mentioned the setup and structure, the capabilities. So if you look at in terms of operating model and rather than individual tenders, right? So how can a structured procurement approach really help around identification, prioritization, and sequencing of value from projects?
Yeah, so definitely using the category management process like in any other category. It's really understanding cross-functionally who is doing what where. So if I take examples, you've got engineers in global companies everywhere in the world. They might be working to the same specification for the same equipment. They might be buying different specs for no reason necessarily, just because somebody wants some blows and whistles and the others doesn't want and might not need. So as a procurement professional, it's about bringing them all together, discussing the specification, understanding what is critical for the equipment, what it is that we can live without, making them understand the landscape of the supplier base and how we can aggregate so that we can the better buying power with the supplier base. And I think it's also this real longevity question and sustainable question around the equipment. So how long do you want the equipment to last? Because you buy equipment for 15, 20, 30 years. How will the equipment evolve? What technology have you got right now that you need to sustain in the long run? What spare parts are you going to need? What kind of maintenance contract? Often, if the Capex is not bought properly, and all of these costs add up. Because, you see that in a lot of organizations. You see they bought the equipment and then, oh, God, they need to maintain it. No capability in the plant. Let's get the suppliers to go and maintain it at a very high cost. Oh, we hadn't thought about the spare parts. Too late. You should have had a spare part contract, probably paying 30% more. And suddenly the control of the machine is dead because the software company who created the software doesn't exist anymore. And then you're stuck with an equipment which cannot be upgraded. And then what do you do? So there is a lot of risk and risk mitigation to be planned ahead around this. And this is why I think the category is so interesting in a way, because you cover all kinds of aspects of good procurement in it.
Yeah, sourcing is probably just part of the initial piece, and then the long-term value management is really critical. Great. And then I think you mentioned it earlier around the whole data, AI, and some of those new, well, I don't want to call them new anymore, but some of those things coming into prime now. So speed and confidence matter as much as savings, right? So it's mitigation that you mentioned and delivery, timeline delivery, etc. So what role do data, benchmarks, comparables really play in helping teams move faster and make better Capex decisions?
Yeah. So I would say AI is very interesting when you compare specifications. So again, if you have a global company, you would have specs for the same equipment everywhere. It would take months to compare the ones that you have in different places. An algorithm can do that for you. Contracts are the same, huge contracts around equipment. So what are, I would say, the majority of the elements that are similar? What are the differences? So all this data extraction can be done quite easily. Analysis of the marketplace, in terms of benchmarking the performance of the equipment, reviews that you might have online through either the supplier base or else users, and bringing all that to life. And then this connectivity around what technology is the one to have so that you sustain the life of the equipment going forward. So there are tools now that we didn't have before that can be used to do that, definitely.
And a common argument that is brought up is, oh, this is the first time we're doing it, not done before. There is no history around that. How do you navigate that, or what's your kind of advice around
So if it's in the sense of we've never bought Capex, it's exactly the same. You take your category management process steps, you land where you need to land. If this is totally new equipment, how do you benchmark? What do you do, etc.? This is where you need a really close relationship with the engineers to really make sure that they understand what is being designed for them, whether it addresses the needs, of the plant, and again, all this planning around life of the equipment that they might not think about. So all the maintenance, MRO, the software, etc. So it doesn't matter if you don't have a benchmark with an equipment that's similar. You just look at what's offered to you on the spec, you critique the spec with your engineering team, and then you try to modify the spec. Sometimes you can, other times you can't, but but at least you've done the exercise. And then, all the preparation then about, I would say, the add-ons where the OEMs make the most of their money. So all the maintenance, the spares, etc. This is where you have to be really thorough. And that's where you're going to add the value at the end.
And then I think the final kind of closing remarks I was really keen on understanding is if you're bringing this at a much higher executive level, right? And what is the single biggest shift for CPG manufacturing leaders to make in Capex procurement so that it becomes a true long-term value engine for the organization?
So I would say it's having the right structure, the right focus, having people who can speak the language of the engineers. Often you've got engineers who join procurement, and actually most of the Capex buyers are engineer by trade. But I wasn't an engineer when I joined the Capex team, and I just learned about the machine. I just went to the plant and I just kind of learned the language, and then I could speak the same language with the engineers and started to build that trust and really brought to them, I would say, the insights from the marketplace and from the different manufacturers and suppliers, brought in the innovation opportunities and really information from the market, because you don't have time to do that. Building that trust and that confidence around the data and helping them negotiate and really, again, making them think long term, because this is not something that you have to buy now because you're running, the budget is running, it's going to finish in a month. Suddenly all the Capex gets bought really, really fast, and then people don't think about what is it am I buying for how long. So that lens around, I would say, the good procurement practices, this is where you can add a lot of value and a lot of benefit to the balance sheet.
Right. So if I were to summarize that, so right structure, speaking the language, I think you said is almost very critical. So that kind of skill and capability in the teams, leveraging the right data sets to make sure you are able to go through the process in a structured way, and finally running the process really well, right? So that's kind of the critical success factor in driving value from Capex. Great. I think that was really insightful and valuable for us to go through. I think we'll keep talking about this because this is not a small area, and we can spend a lot more time talking about some of the interesting things that we are seeing in this. But thank you for the time today.
Thank you, Vikas.
And look forward to touch base again.
Yeah, thank you.